Hi everybody, salam. Welcome back to my channel. So in this lesson, we are going to learn about the simple past tense. Before we start the lesson, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please don't forget to do so. When I see you guys support, it really motivates me to make more lessons for you guys. All right, now let's just start the lesson. So far in the previous lessons, we have learned the two verbs بودن and داشتن in the present tense. But in this lesson, we are going to learn these two verbs along with other verbs in the past tense. In this lesson, first we are going to learn how to form simple past tense, and then we are going to take a look at 10 different examples. Simple past, which in Persian is called either ماضی ساده or گذشته ساده, is used to describe actions that are completed at a point in the past. They have a specific beginning and ending. For example, I slept. If we want to describe habitual or continuous actions in the past, then other tenses are used, which we will learn later. How to form simple past tense. It's actually very easy to form simple past tense. The first thing we need to do is to remove the letter nun from the infinitive, and then we need to add the verbal ending that matches the subject. For example, here we have the verb بودن. So when we remove the letter nun from the infinitive, that's going to give us the past stem بود. And then we need to conjugate that to the subject. Let's say the subject is man. So here is the ending for man. So it's going to be بودم. I was. And now let's take a look at the second verb, داشتن. So we need the past stem, and the past stem is by removing the letter nun from the infinitive. So داشت. And then let's say the subject is شما. So this is the conjugation for شما. So داشتید, you had. And also remember here for third person singular, there is no verbal ending. Now let's also take a look at the negative. So for the negative, we need to attach the letter nun to the past stem, and also there's an implied short vowel a on it. So when I attach the letter nun to the past stem, it's going to be nabud. So then I need to conjugate that. So budam becomes, for the negative, becomes nabudam. And also for داشتن, we just attach the letter na to داشتن, so it becomes to dash to the past stem. So it's going to be نداشت. And then with the conjugation, so داشتید becomes نداشتید. Now let's go over these two verbs in the past tense. So we have already learned how to conjugate the verb بودن in the present tense in the lesson about the verb to be. So I'm not going to go through over it right now. I'm just going to go through the past tense. And for past tense, we said we need the past stem, which you can see in the color purple. And then we need the verbal ending. We need to conjugate it to the subject. So this is going to read as بودم, بودی, بود, بودیم, بودید, بودند. So no ending for third person singular. And now let's go over the verb داشتن. Again, here is the present tense. We have already covered this in the lesson about the verb to have, داشتن. So now let's just go through the past tense. Again, we need the past stem plus the verbal ending. So these are the past stem in the purple, in the color purple. داشتم, داشتی, داشت, داشتیم, داشتید, داشتند. Now let's take a look at compound verbs. As I said in the previous lesson, when it comes to compound verbs, anytime we want to give a tense to the verb, we want to negate it, we want to conjugate the verb, we always need to change the verbal element. So the first verb here is کار کردن. کار is the non-verbal element and کردن is a verbal element. So we need to change the verbal element کردن part here. Alright, so now we get rid of the letter nun from کردن, so that's going to leave us with کرد, the past stem. And now let's say the subject is او. So we said that there's no verbal ending for third person singular, so we don't need to add anything to the past tense. So it's going to give us kar kard. He or she worked. Let's take a look at the next one. برگشتن. Students usually when they look at this verb they think it's a simple verb, but برگشتن is a compound verb because we said that simple verbs are only constructed from one word. But as you can see here, this is two parts. This is two elements, the first one and the second one. And this bar here is a preposition. All right, so now we need to remove nun from the verbal element or the simple verb گشتن. It's going to leave us with گشت. And now let's say the subject is آنها. So this is the ending for آنها. So برگشتند. They returned. And also let's take a look at the negative of the compound verbs in the past tense. So it's the same thing. We add the letter nun with the implied short vowel a. So na to the past tense. So here کرد, when we add na to it, it's going to become نکرد. So the verb کار کرد here, it's going to become کار نکرد. So the negative is between the non-verbal element and before the verbal element. And for گشت, so we add a na to it, so نگشت. And then with the verbal ending, so برگشتند, it's going to become نگشتند. Now let's get a little bit more practices with other verbs. So here on the left side, we have some phrases here that we want to say. This phrase is in Farsi, and then on the right side, you can find the subject and then also the verbal ending that goes with the subject. So in case you haven't memorized them, you can find them here. All right, so now the first one, we want to say I became. So we need the infinitive of to become in Farsi, which is shodan. And then we need to remove the letter nun from it and then add the ending to it. So it's going to be when the subject is man شدم. Next one, you bought. So to buy is خریدن. And now the subject is تو خریدی. Next one, he or she ate. To eat is خوردن. So this letter U here is silent. So it's خوردن, not خوردن. So the subject is U. So U خورد. No verbal ending here. Next one, we did not go. So to go is رفتن, but it's also negative to here, so we need to negate it. So the subject is ما نرفتیم. So we attach na to the past tense. Next one, you did not see. To see is دیدن. Subject شما, and then it's also negative. شما ندیدید. And then the informal of ندیدید is ندیدین. So the letter dal here becomes nun. And the next one, they did not sleep. So to sleep is خوابیدن. The letter U here is, or vav is also here silent. So خوابیدن. And the subject is آنها. آنها نخوابیدند. And then the informal is we remove the dal from it. So نخوابیدند becomes نخوابیدن. We have already learned the informal in previous lessons. Now let's take a look at a few compound verbs so we can get some practices with compound verbs as well. So next verb is, next phrase, you want to say I lived. So to live, the infinitive is زندگی کردن. And remember, this is a compound verb, so we need to change the verbal element. So we remove letter nun from verbal element and then we add the verbal ending to it. So من زندگی کردم. Next one, you returned. So to return is برگشتن. So it's going to be برگشتی. Next, he or she did not shop. This is different than to buy. To buy is خریدن. It's like when you buy something specific, but to shop is like when you go shopping. So this verb is خرید کردن. And then the subject is او, so it's going to be او خرید کرد. No ending. Next one, we did not work. To work is کار کردن. So the subject is ما کار نکردیم. So remember the negative and the letter na comes needs to be attached to the past stem, so it comes between the non-verbal part and the verbal part. Next one, you did not make. To make is درست کردن. So the subject is شما درست نکردید. And then the informal of نکردید, again the letter dal becomes nun. So نکردین. Next one, they did not order. For example, when you order food at the restaurant, سفارش دادن. The subject is آنها سفارش ندادند. So here where the na goes, it goes before the past stem. And then ندادند, the informal, we drop the letter dal, so it becomes ندادن. In order to make some sentences in the past tense, it's also very helpful to know some time adverbs that is used in the past tense. So some of the time adverbs, you just have to memorize them. For example, دیشب for last night, دیروز, yesterday, or the day before yesterday is پریروز, or last year is پارسال. There's more to this list, but these are just the very common ones we use, which again, there's no formula to come up with this. You just have to memorize them. For many other time adverbs, there is a formula that's helpful to know. For example, last. You want to say last month, last week, last Sunday. So you want to say that in Farsi, we need the time, whatever you want to say, like week, month, year, or any days of the week. And then we need that with پیش. And then we need to connect it with اضافه. For example, هفته پیش, last week. ماه پیش, last month. سال پیش, last year. Or شنبه پیش, last Saturday. Or we can also use گذشته, either one. For example, هفته گذشته, last week. ماه گذشته, last month. سال گذشته, last year. And شنبه گذشته, last Saturday. The literal meaning of پیش is before, and the literal meaning of گذشته is past. But when in combination with this times, then the meaning changes to last in English. Also, if you want to say ago in English, for example, a few weeks ago, two weeks ago, 1 week ago, something like this, then again, we need the numbers here, or chand for a few, and then any numbers. And then we need the times, for example, هفته, ماه, سال, شنبه. And then again, we need پیش. For example, we want to say a few weeks ago, چند هفته پیش. So the first one, we do not need to connect with اضافه. So we do not say چنده هفته پیش. We say چند, no اضافه. And then for the second part, اضافه is optional. You can either connect it with اضافه or not, no اضافه. Let's see a few more. So you want to say 1 month ago, یک ماه پیش, or یک ماه پیش. You want to say 2 years ago, 2 سال پیش, or 2 ساله پیش. Now that we have learned how to form past tense, we can start making some sentences. But before that, if you need the vocab that are used in this lesson, there's a link in the description box. you can just click on it and you can find the vocab there with their pronunciations and transliterations. All right, so the first sentence here, it says, yesterday my mother and I were not home, we were outside. So the verb that is used in this sentence is بودن. Here are the other vocab. Yesterday is دیروز, mother is مادر, home is خانه, but in the spoken language it's pronounced خونه. And then outside is بیرون. So we need to start with the subject and we need to end the sentence with the verb. The subject is my mother and I, but it's not very common to say my mother and I in Farsi. Instead, we say me and my mother. And then usually the time adverbs in Persian comes after the subject. So we are going to start the sentence with من و مادرم دیروز خانه نبودیم. بیرون بودیم. So a few things that here you need to know is that, as you can see here, the time adverb is placed after the subject. It's not incorrect to come before the subject, but it's just more common to come after. And then another thing you need to know, in English in the second clause, you can see we're outside, but in Farsi we don't need to say ma here again because it's already implied in the conjugation. And then now let's go over the informal of the sentence. So خانه in the informal language we said is pronounced خونه. And then also the conjunction va in the informal language, we don't pronounce it anymore, but instead we put a short vowel o on the letter before the conjunction. So this sentence in informal language is going to read as من و مادرم دیروز خونه نبودیم. بیرون بودیم. Next sentence, we want to say last year I had a dog and a cat. All right, so the verb here is to have, which in Farsi is داشتن. And here are the other vocab. Last year is either parsal or سال پیش. It doesn't matter, you can use either one. And then dog is sag and cat is گربه. So here we are going to start with the subject. Even though the subject is optional, we don't need to start with that. But we're going to start with the subject. من پارسال یک سگ و یک گربه داشتم. Again, the subject is put in a bracket because it's optional. So this sentence is pretty straightforward. Now let's just see how this sentence is pronounced in the spoken informal language. So yek here becomes ye, and then we have another yek here becomes ye, and then also the pronunciation of the conjunction va changes too. So this will be the pronunciation of the conjunction va. All right. I'm not going to pronounce man anymore. So parsal یه سگ و یه گربه داشتم. Next example, we want to say last night my children got sick. So here the verb is to get, but not to get something and not to get somewhere, meaning to get to become. For example, I got sick, I got happy, I got sad. For any time you want to translate that in Farsi, then we need to use the verb شدن. And now the rest of the vocab, last night is دیشب, and then my children, so the word child is بچه. So when we are translating this sentence, we need to make this noun بچه plural, and then it also has a possessive adjective. And then sick is just مریض or بیمار. So here I'm going to start this sentence with the time adverb. دیشب بچه هایم مریض شدند. We said earlier, usually the time adverb comes after the subject, but it's okay to also bring it before the subject as well. And then now the informal of the sentence. So بچه هایم, the informal is بچه هام. Because in the formal language, we need to add a ye before the possessive adjective because ha ends in a long vowel aleph. But in the informal language, we just drop it. And then شدند becomes شدن. So this sentence in the informal spoken language and a little bit faster is دیشب بچه هام مریض شدن. Next example. Yesterday I didn't go outside. So the verb here is to go, which is رفتن. And then the other vocab, yesterday is دیروز and outside is بیرون. So this sentence is من دیروز بیرون نرفتم. Again, من is in a bracket because it's optional. And then the rest is pretty clear. Next example, Mina and her sister saw 2 dogs. So the verb here is to see, دیدن. So the rest of the vocab, sister is خواهر, and then 2 is دو, and dog is سگ. And remember, we need to say her sister, so we need to attach the possessive adjective to خواهر. مینا و خواهرش 2 سگ دیدند. Just remember here that the noun سگ stays singular because there's number 2 before that. Versus in English, you need to make the noun plural. Alright, so now this sentence in the informal language, a few things changes. So the first thing is that we need to add a ta after the number. We have already learned this in previous lesson. And then the verb دیدن becomes دیدن. And the pronunciation of مینا و خواهرش also changes. And then خواهرش in the informal language becomes خواهرش. So instead of having a short vowel a that is used in the formal language, instead a short vowel e is added. So this sentence is going to read as مینا و خواهرش 2 تا سگ دیدن. Next example is last night we ate a lot at a party. So the verb here is to eat, which is خوردن. And remember the letter vav here is not pronounced and instead there's a short vowel o on it, خوردن. Another thing that you need to know when it comes to the verb خوردن is that in Farsi it doesn't come by itself. In English, here in the sentence you can say we ate a lot, but you don't need to mention that you ate dinner or you ate food or something. But in Farsi, we need to mention, like, what did you eat? Did you eat dinner, lunch, breakfast? So if it's too general, then we can just use غذا. غذا means food. And then now the rest of the vocab. So last night is دیشب, and then a lot is خیلی, and at is either dar or to. To is used in the informal spoken language, and then party is mehmani, and mehmuni is the informal pronunciation of it. ما دیشب در مهمانی خیلی غذا خوردیم. So as you can see here, the noun غذا is added before the verb to eat because again we need to be specific. We can't just use the verb خوردن by itself. If we don't want to use غذا, we can also use شام, you know, because it's implied by the time adverb that it was last night. So we can also use شام. All right, and now the informal of the sentence is dar, the informal is to, and mehmani, informal is mehmoni. So this sentence in the informal spoken language is, and I'm not going to pronounce the subject anymore, دیشب تو مهمونی خیلی غذا خوردیم. Next example, yesterday you worked a lot, so now you are tired. In this sentence, we have 2 verbs. The first one is worked, which the infinitive of that is کار کردن. So this one needs to be in the past tense. And then the second verb is are for you are, which comes from the verb from the infinitive to be, which in Farsi is بودن. And the present stem of that is هست. And now the rest of the vocab. Yesterday is دیروز. A lot is خیلی. Now is الان or حالا. And then tired is خسته. So the sentence is going to go as شما دیروز خیلی کار کردید. پس حالا خسته هستید. Instead of حالا, we can also use الان. It doesn't matter. And also we have learned the coordinative conjunction pas, which means so, in the lesson about coordinating conjunctions. So the rest is pretty straightforward. Now the informal version of the sentence, کار کردید. So کردید becomes کردین, and خسته هستید is خسته این. So this sentence in the informal spoken language is going to read as, and we don't need to say شما anymore. دیروز خیلی کار کردین, پس حالا خسته این. Next example, a few years ago they lived in this city. The verb here is to live, زندگی کردن. And now the rest of the vocab. So a few years ago, we learned earlier how to come up with this time adverb here. So it's going to be چند سال پیش. So remember, there's no اضافه here. چند سال, no اضافه. But between سال and پیش, the اضافه is optional. So we can either say چند سال پیش or چند سال پیش. And then the preposition in is در. The informal is to, and then city is شهر. چند سال پیش آنها در این شهر زندگی کردند. So this one is pretty straightforward. And the only thing is the informal version of the sentence, which آنها becomes اونها. And we said that the informal of در is to. Remember, it is written the same as to for second person singular, but it's pronounced differently. This is pronounced to. Alright, so the informal of the sentence is, and کردند becomes کردن. چند سال پیش اونا تو این شهر زندگی کردن. Last week, my grandmother made a cake. Here the verb is to make, درست کردن. درست کردن has other meanings too. It means to fix, to correct something, or maybe to do your hair. We also use this verb, درست کردن. There's another verb that means to cook is پختن. But in this example, we're just going to use درست کردن because درست کردن is more common than پختن. And now the rest of the vocab. Last week is هفته پیش, and then grandmother is مادر بزرگ, but we need to make it possessive, and then cake is just cake. مادر بزرگم هفته پیش یک کیک درست کرد. So again, this one is also pretty straightforward. So remember to attach the letter mim for my grandmother to the noun grandmother. And then here we need to have اضافه, هفته پیش, and then the rest is pretty clear. Next example, last month he returned home. So the verb here is to return, برگشتن. But remember, برگشتن in Farsi is an intransitive verb. It doesn't mean to return something to somewhere. For example, I returned this book to the library. We don't use it in that context. It is only used when someone returns somewhere. We will learn more about this in another lesson. All right, now the rest of the vocab. So last month is ماه پیش, and then home is خانه, informal خونه. او ماه پیش خانه برگشت. So pretty easy. And then the informal of خانه is خونه. So ماه پیش خونه برگشت. Stay tuned for the next lesson because we are going to learn the simple present tense in Persian. We finished this lesson. I hope you guys found this lesson helpful. If so, please support me here with your likes and by subscribing to my channel. And also, if you have any questions, anything, please just write it in the comment section and I'll be more than happy to help you out here. Alright, see you in another lesson. Khoda Hafiz.